Well, good evening. How's everybody doing this evening? Isn't that a great video? It's kind of hard to follow that most of the time. I don't know what to do with that. But I'd like to welcome everybody to the second public meeting we're having regarding the Airport Master Planning Workshop. My name is Mike Langeth, and I'm the President and CEO of the Airport Authority. First, I'd like to begin with an introduction of our Chairman of the Board, Mr. Dickie Thompson. And Mr. Thompson has got a few words he'd like to say before we begin. Mr. Thompson?
Thank you, Michael, and good evening, everybody. First, I would like to thank everybody for coming out tonight to engaging with RDU as we plan for the future. I would like next to recognize a couple of our board members that are here with us tonight, Mr. Rob Tier and Mr. Tommy Hunt, if you guys would stand up. And I'd like to also recognize elected officials that are here, and I just see Mark Stolman, the mayor of Morrisville, if you would stand up. Thank you. So thanks for coming. I appreciate that. So Vision 2040 is a vital exercise that will ensure that our passengers continue to receive the world-class experience they're accustomed to at RDU. So I encourage you after the presentation you're going to see tonight to hang around and talk with either me, our board members, or any of our staff, or our consultant, Recondo and Associates, for any questions that you guys may have. And so we'll be trying to answer your questions. We'll be happy to engage with you on that. That's all my remarks for tonight. We're going to keep it short, and I'm going to turn it back over to Michael.
All right.
Thank you.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. As most of you know, we've kind of kicked off this process in June of this past year, and since June, I've really been kind of getting out to the public and talking to them about this master planning process because we really want to encourage kind of participation and engagement through this entire process. And of course, we're very pleased that you took the time out of your day to come and participate tonight with us. We've got lots of ways in which you can actually do that. A couple things tonight. You're going to get a presentation. It's going to tell you a little bit about what we've accomplished so far. We're going to tell you a little bit about kind of what we call the inventory phase, which kind of goes out and looks at all the physical infrastructure that we have at RDU. The next piece we're going to look at is a little bit about our passenger traffic, our aviation forecast for our passenger employments for the future over the next 25 years, and also those total operations over that same period of time. Our consultant has also looked at that inventory and the actual forecast and done a little bit of what we call a gap analysis to try to determine where do we think we might have some shortfalls in terms of that overall infrastructure. And a lot of that presentation this evening will kind of cover that information. And of course, they'll talk about the next step. And that next step is going to be developing a list of alternatives of what should we consider in terms of infrastructure for the future as we move forward. But during this entire process, public involvement is going to be extremely important. We need you to be part of that process. And so when Recondo and Associates gets completed with that, they're going to have boards that are set up with their staff that's going to man these boards. It's going to allow you to go up, look at the information, and actually ask questions from the folks that are actually doing the research and doing some of the studies. So you can engage with them in terms of an overall conversation. Not only can you engage with the Recondo staff, our consultants, but also the board of directors are here. I'm here. I'll be more than happy to try to answer any questions you might have of me, not only just for the master planning process, but if there are any other issues or concerns, I'm also available to answer those as well. There's some key staff I'd like to identify with. First of all, Bill Sandifer. Where's Bill? Bill's in the very back. Bill is our Chief Operating Officer and is really leading this effort for RDU. We also have Ellis Caton. Ellis, where are you at? Ellis is over here. He's our Director of Planning and Environment. And Susan Gist. There she is, part of our environmental and planning team and a new member of the RDU staff. Those folks are really doing the heavy lifting on a day-to-day basis, working with our consultants, and those folks will also be available to exchange information and have a conversation about the future of RDU and this planning process. We also have a great communication team that's here tonight. I think Teresa Damiano, our Vice President of Communications and Community Affairs, is here, along with Minnie Hamlin, our Director of Communications. And I think we also have Andrew Sawyer and Holly that is here as well as part of the communications team. This group does a fantastic job of keeping you informed about what's going on at RDU. And for this master planning process, they've developed what we call a microsite, which is a website which will have today's PowerPoint presentation, along with some background information, Also provides you the opportunity, if you want to comment, you can actually submit comments through that process. We also have social media that we're going to be doing through a hashtag. That hashtag is RDU2040, where you can actually communicate and ask questions along that same process. So there's lots of ways to provide feedback through this process through tonight, as well as when you leave here, to stay engaged, because we still have several months to go before we get a final plan. And it's very important that at the end of this, we're going to develop a final recommendation that's going to go before the Board of Directors for their consideration. What we want to be able to communicate to our board is this is a reflection of the staff, this is a reflection of our consultants, and also, more importantly, a reflection of our community. That we're coming together collectively to say this is the plan that we think is right for our community for the next 25 years. So I hope you'll enjoy the presentation. We've got from Raccano & Associates, Ms. Colleen Quinn. She's going to go over some of the information I talked about and also introduce her staff. So please help me welcome Colleen to the microphone.
Thank you. And thank you again. I know you've heard it already, but really we do appreciate you coming out tonight. This is an important part of our process, and we do need both to share information with you and to get your feedback back through that process. So we really do appreciate the time that you took to come out tonight. This is the second of our 4 workshops. For those of you who may have been at the first one, we're kind of building on the information that we shared then, which was very introductory. We've now gotten into some of the analysis, and we want to share some of those early conclusions with you, and give you a peek at the coming work, what we're going to be doing in our next steps as well. And so if we move into this, this gives you an idea of where we are in this process. We've completed a lot of the analytic heavy lifting, and that's the number crunching and the analysis that underpins everything we do from here on out. So we've gone through the first 3 steps here. It looks like it's fairly well through the study, but really this is the first 6 months. We do a lot of number crunching. We do a lot of collecting of information, analyzing, distilling that down to building blocks that we can use to move forward. So you can see we're about halfway through that process, and we're just starting on the development of alternatives. And we're going to be coming back to you on that over time. To give you an overview of the schedule, we have an 18-month schedule for the project, and we remain right where we want to be at this point, the place where we've targeted at this place. So we are at that second public meeting right here in the winter of this year. Okay, one of the things that we shared with you at the first public workshop were the introductory or the first set of goals we have for the project. There were 4 at that point, and we've taken those initial 4, we've refined them, we've taken input from the advisory committees that participate in supporting the master planning effort, and we've also gotten input from the authority staff, and we've used that to distill down 6 goals that will lead us through the remainder of the study. And these 6 goals are very much in line with the authority's vision and mission, and those are available on the website. But it's aligned. The study is very much in tune with the authority's larger view of the airport. So to go through these, they're fairly straightforward, and I think you can see kind of the pattern in these. They are all action items, and by that we mean they're efforts that we will use as we go through the planning process to actually accomplish these things. So optimization, that's a big part of this, optimizing resources, personnel, facilities, infrastructure. That's very important as we go forward. It has a strong financial component to that as well. We're also looking to encompass improvements that go toward the safety and capacity of the airport in serving the community. Of course, the airport is here to serve, in fact, the travel demand here. Also enhancing that customer experience. The customers are the passengers, the employees, the airlines, the tenants. It's a very broad base, and the planning process really needs to enhance from all sides of that look. And as we look forward as well, we're going to be looking for plans that, in the development planning, that are scalable, because we can't predict the future. There can be local events, regional events, larger events that influence that. And so, of course, we want to be flexible and scalable so we can react and respond to that. That's going to be a pretty crucial part of it. Connectivity to the larger community, other modes, is going to be crucial as well. This is an airport, of course, air traffic, but it's got to connect into and link into the community as well. So these 6 goals are going to take us through the remainder of the planning process. And if you're looking at or wondering how those goals will take us into the next steps, or showing you here essentially more detail on the remaining steps. So as we move into the development of alternatives, we will actually come up with a lot of alternatives, and through a fairly disciplined process that will be documented, we will screen those out so that the better ideas rise up. We'll come to some shortlisting, we'll take a deeper dive, we'll evaluate these concepts so that we can really understand how well they align with the goals that we've established, as well as how well they meet the demands and what the costs are and what the consequences or impacts are. So it's a multi-pronged process, but you can see that these goals are pretty important to us for the remainder of the study. And we will continually come back and measure against these goals as we go forward. So last time we met with you, we were in the early stages of preparing the forecasts, and we've gotten through that process. And I'll take you right to the punchline on this slide, and that is that the FAA has approved the forecast for the master plan study. That approval is one of 2 points where the FAA will effectively touch the study or will have involvement in it. They watch it throughout, they participate in it, but they do need to approve the forecast, and ultimately they will need to approve the airport layout plan that we develop that documents the planning process or planning results. So we've developed a baseline forecast. That is, in fact, what the FAA reviews and approves. And that baseline is what we consider to be the most realistic view of what the future activity will be at the airport, both in magnitude and characteristics. But we know that that crystal ball is good at best. It's not perfect. And so the activity that actually develops will in all likelihood differ somewhat from the forecast, whether that's the magnitude of that, the characteristics, the uniqueness of it. So what we do to plan for that or plan around that is actually to look at additional scenarios. And we look at a high scenario, we look at a low scenario, and those are both defined to be very realistic. And by that I mean they are not the baseline plus 10% and plus or minus 10%. They are actually scenarios that we craft that say if this happened, what would it translate into in terms of the forecast demand. And we use these forecasts, just like we use the goals throughout the planning process, we're going to use these forecasts the same way. So we generally plan to the baseline, and then we test the sensitivity of our plan against the high forecast, and we test the financial feasibility, we test the ability to implement or phase that, the scalability of it. Some of these things that were goals, we need to test those by using the forecast. So again, we're going to go high and go low on it so that at the end of the day we have a plan that is feasible, it's flexible enough, and it allows the authority to accordion in and out as they may need to in the future. So a bit more detail on the forecasts. What you're seeing here are the total operations and total enplanements at the air carrier enplanements at the airport over the 25-year planning horizon. Total operations includes airlines, so kind of the commercial component, but it also includes your cargo, your general aviation, military activity. About 2/3 of the activity at Raleigh-Durham International Airport is air carrier, and the remaining third is all the other categories there. So we've got the three scenarios shown there. Of course, as you might expect, the baseline is right there in the middle, but it's not centered in the middle. It's coming out of these other realistic scenarios. And to give you an idea of how the growth rates that we're looking at in this forecast, how they measure up to what the FAA sees for the country as a whole. And so we'll look at operations first there, and it's about 3.5% compound annual growth rate. That's more aggressive than what the FAA sees nationally. They see about 0.6% growth in national operations. And their view of Raleigh-Durham International Airport is they see that at about 1.4%. So a little bit more optimistic than that. And part of that goes to the airline business model and the size aircraft that are flying. So larger aircraft tend to be fewer operations, smaller aircraft tend to be more. So there's some of that built into that number as well. Looking at the enplanements, you can see the baseline growth is about 2.3% compound annual growth rate. The FAA sees that as, sees the U.S. as being slightly under that, about 2% for the country as a whole in terms of passenger growth. And they see Raleigh-Durham International Airport as just about the same. So about 2.4%, and we're 2.3%. So it's very much in line. The realism is there in the forecast. So this will really underpin all our work from this point on. The other components to the forecast, there's many different components. We'll show you a couple here. One is cargo volume on the left and general aviation activity on the right. And you can see in both these categories, generally steady growth as the economy recovers and as you tend to see that economic recovery and development. So, too, we'll begin to see that in the cargo volumes and the general aviation, the more discretionary flying activity. The FAA doesn't, well, they break cargo into two components, domestic and international. They're far more aggressive on the international component, about 1.5%, and their domestic is a little bit lower than Raleigh-Durham. So you're very much in line with that in terms of this forecast. The general aviation growth, we're mirroring the same growth rate that the FAA is seeing for general aviation as a whole. So the way we take that forecast, that's the demand, right? So we take that forecast activity into the next step of the analysis. And so when we say the demand capacity analysis, that is the demand measured against the capacity of the airport. As Mike indicated, we spent a fair amount of time at the inventory effort, and that is documenting the facilities that exist and their capacity, how those facilities are used, the operational characteristics, so that we can, in fact, do kind of this gap analysis that he referred to. So we're again looking at the existing facilities. How well do those meet or how well do they accommodate the demand that we foresee through the forecast? That's essentially what we're measuring. We're creating building blocks from that. So that gap that we analyze, the difference between the ability to accommodate that demand and what that future demand is going to grow to, those are the building blocks. Those are what we say are the required facilities to meet demand. Those are what we will use in 6 specific areas to analyze different development concepts, different plans. And the boards, hopefully you'll be able to spend some time here this evening with our different boards, and we've got the folks that are kind of our subject matter experts that have, in fact, engaged in the analysis in these 6 areas. So they can talk to you very specifically about each of the 6 major components. So I do encourage you to engage them, if you will, because they've got a lot of detail. This presentation, of course, is a very short form of 6 months worth of work. So there's a lot you can engage us on there. When we do these analyses, just to give you a little background, we use a whole series of tools. There's no single tool, no one way to calculate this. We size the tool or select the tool for the challenge at hand. So we've got some things that are very sophisticated models that we run through on very specific facility performance. We use a lot of other tools, kind of spreadsheet models, queuing analyses, queuing models, planning parameters, rules of thumb, industry planning parameters. We also use level of service goals, and those are industry-defined level of service goals. So we know on both a space and a time component how well the facilities will perform. That's part of our gap analysis. And the goal, of course, being to maintain a desirable level of service without overbuilding, so there's not overcapacity. So a lot of the conclusions that I'm going to touch on 7 of them here tonight are very significant ones that are kind of emerging, but these are all coming out of the technical material that you can see on the boards around here. So any of our folks that are here tonight can talk to these 7 or any other emerging conclusions that we're seeing. And these conclusions will continue to grow over the remainder of the planning horizons. These are just 6 that we thought we'd share up front here. And the first 3 are actually dealing with the airfield. And we have looked at the airfield long-term capacity, and it is adequate through 2040. That's not to say that we won't look beyond 2040 in terms of we don't want to build an end of the road at 2040. The airport needs to have something, some place to go beyond that. But by 2040, we're seeing adequate capacity at the airport. Also looking at the need to assess long-term air service, particularly as your international service is growing and what those demands are. What does that mean for the airfield? Because at the same time, you've got to make a very substantial investment, the community, in the long runway reconstruction. The age of that facility and the condition warrants reconstruction or very significant rehabilitation in a fairly near time frame. So that's going to be part of our calculus as we look at alternatives. We're going to look at both the long-term capacity, specific need to serve particular markets, particularly the longer haul activity, and also, again, the engineering side of that to look at the best alternative to reconstruct and protect that economic investment. We're also looking at long-term gate capacity, and with the 45 gates that exist today at the airport, we're seeing a need for almost 50% increase in that in a high-growth scenario over a 25-year horizon. So think of that as a very, very long-term picture, but it is a significant change in your gate count from what exists today. We're also seeing a need, particularly with the growing international service. You're going to have Paris service coming this May. As we look at how well the terminal facilities accommodate that, we do see a need for enhancing the ability to process passengers in an efficient, effective, high level of service through those international arrival facilities. The need to get passengers and employees and users of the airport to and from the airport in an efficient manner. We're identifying the need for roadway and access improvements, roadways, intersections, other modes as they interface with the airport. And also rental cars. That a lot of that is serving the leisure community, but also very strongly the business community. We do see the need to grow those facilities fairly significantly over 25 years. Absolutely. Sure. As we're looking at the condition of the long runway 5 left, 23 right, the reconstruction of that is going to be a very substantial investment for the airport, for the authority. And so the decision on how to best approach that will be made in the context of the larger set of alternatives that we will consider those alternatives to accommodate long-term growth. So we're linking the two activities, although one is an engineering-driven outcome, if you will, the pavement condition. But we don't want to undertake a plan for development or I should say plan to address that without understanding how that relates to a much larger picture, meaning the long-term development of the airport.
Say again, sir.
Cost component?
So, yes, sir. Thank you.
I don't mean to interrupt.
No, that's okay. Board Member Mr. Hunt asked about the costs associated with that redevelopment of that runway. I will tell you that we are working with our engineers right now to try to figure out what that actual cost is going to wind up being. One of the things that came out of this process as we started to look at our pavement is something that we had originally forecasted to be about 7 to 10 years out. Now looks like this runway needs to be rehabilitated in a 3 to 5 year window. So that's really accelerated on us. So we're fine-tuning, trying to figure out, it's very preliminary right now, how much that's going to wind up costing us as we work through different alternatives at this point. Okay?
Okay, our next steps, where we're going from here, as you saw from an earlier slide, we're at the beginning of the alternatives analysis process. So we're beginning to conceptualize how do we meet those gaps that have been identified? How do we provide the facilities that are needed to accommodate demand over the long term at an acceptable level of service, at a financially feasible manner, and in a way that's operationally efficient? All that is going to go into the alternatives development process. So we're just starting that. We will have another opportunity to come back to stakeholders in our next public meeting, and that's one where we will actually share a lot of the alternatives that we have developed. We'll have been doing a fair amount of work on those, conceptualizing them, screening them down to those that continue to have legs that can be feasible moving forward. And we'll also have a fourth opportunity to interact with the public on this when there's been an identified preferred alternative, but yet that it hasn't gone into the refinement process. So you can see that there's quite a bit of work yet to do, but a number of opportunities yet for us to interact with stakeholders on this. So with that, we would like you to take the time to kind of circulate here and interact with our subject matter experts, talk to the folks that have done the analysis. They've got a lot of detail. They can talk to you on any of the subjects for as long as you want to talk about it. So we've put up some boards that help illustrate some of the conclusions. There's going to be a lot of documentation ultimately that comes out of any master plan study. But right now we're kind of giving you the high-level summary of a lot of this and really hoping to engage you so we can answer the questions. Take your feedback. That's just as important as you listening to us. We do want to listen to you. We want that feedback. It's very important to us as we get into the alternatives that we do want to consider those things that the stakeholder community thinks are important as well.
Could you introduce your staff and
Yes.
expertise as well?
Yes, thank you, Mike. I meant to do that and I completely forgot. Okay, so I'm going to have each of our folks, maybe they'll just come up here so you can put a name with a face. Everyone is wearing a name tag, so that's going to help you a little bit. But we've broken it by subject matter. And so our first subject matter, airfield, and this is Joe Burge from our staff. Joe, there we go. He can answer any and all airfield questions. Terminal questions will be fielded by Scott Hyde. He's one of our lead terminal planners at Recondo. He's expert in all things terminal. Similarly, anything landside, access, parking, rental car related, Jake Strawn will handle those. And then last but not least, in the technical subjects, Julie Kenfield will be addressing cargo, support facilities, general aviation. She's done all that analysis. And then over on my other side here, Kristen Suda will be addressing with myself the forecast of activity and just kind of roaming around as well, so we can talk to any of these topics you'd like. But I think you'll enjoy engaging our subject matter experts because they really do know the analysis inside and out. And so with that, I'd encourage you to kind of use the opportunity to circulate and pepper them with questions and give them your thoughts. So again, thank you for coming out tonight. Their names? I don't believe staff names are, our staff is, I don't believe, on the website. Oh, okay, and everyone's wearing a name tag. So as you, and if you, I can share them with you as well, if that helps, sure.